Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. What if I told you that every time something went wrong in your life, every betrayal, every heartbreak, every room you walked into and felt your stomach tighten, there was a part of you that already knew. She already knew, you already knew, and the question that should stop you cold, the question I want you to sit with before we go 1 second further is this: why did you talk yourself out of it? That question is not an accusation. It is an invitation back to yourself. Because today, right now, in this moment, we are going to do something radical together. We are going to stop apologizing for what we feel. We are going to stop editing ourselves for other people's comfort. And we are going to learn to trust the most sophisticated survival system ever created, your own intuition. I want to begin by honoring something that has been dismissed for far too long. Your intuition is not just a feeling. It is not just a hunch. It is not just a woman being too emotional or overly sensitive. Two phrases that have been used perhaps more times you can count to make you doubt the very thing that was trying to protect you. Let me tell you what your intuition actually is. Neuroscientists, the people who spend their lives mapping the extraordinary universe inside your skull, have discovered that your body processes approximately 11 million bits of information every single second. 11 million? Do you know how many of those bits your conscious, logical, rational mind can process at once? About 50. So whereas all of that other information it is going into you, into your nervous system, into your body, into the tightening of your chest, the unease in your belly, the sudden inexplicable urge to leave a room. That is not weakness. That is wisdom processing at a speed your words cannot keep up with. Now, here is what breaks my heart, and I say this with nothing but love and deep respect for every woman listening to me right now. We were taught, many of us, in our families, in our churches, in our marriages, in our workplaces, we were taught to be good. And being good often meant being quiet. It meant not making waves, not trusting yourself over the authority of a man, a doctor, a husband, a boss. It meant swallowing the thing you knew and replacing it with the thing you hoped. I want you to breathe for a moment right now, because I know some of you just felt something. A memory surfaced, a moment, a time when you knew and you stayed anyway. Or you left and everyone told you that you were wrong, or you said nothing and paid the price in silence for years. That experience, that is not a wound to be ashamed of. That is the beginning of your healing. And healing, my friend, begins with a single courageous act, believing yourself. Now, I want to make something very clear before we go deeper. Trusting your intuition does not mean you will never make mistakes. It does not mean you become an island. It does not mean you stop loving people or trusting people. It means you build a sanctuary inside yourself, a quiet, sacred room where the noise of the world cannot enter. And you learn to go there before you make the decisions that matter. That sanctuary is not a luxury. For many of us, it has been a survival mechanism. And I don't use that word lightly. Think about the women in your life. Think about yourself. who navigated impossible situations, who raised children while also managing a husband's instability, who held families together during financial collapse, who sat by hospital bedsides and made medical decisions that no one prepared them for. What got you through? It wasn't always logic. It wasn't always a plan. Sometimes it was a bone deep knowing that told you, this is the next right thing, do it. Move. That was your intuition, and it saved you. If our intuition is this powerful, this intelligent, this faithful, then why do so many of us struggle to trust it? I want to explore that with you. Not to dwell in the past, but to understand it so completely that we can finally let it go. There are 3 primary wounds that disconnect us from our inner knowing. And if you are honest with yourself, truly honest, the way you can only be when no one is watching, I think you will recognize at least one of them. The wound of being told you were too much. Maybe it was a parent. Maybe it was a partner. Maybe it was a culture or a religion that loved you deeply, but also in its own brokenness taught you that your feelings were inconvenient, that your knowing was arrogance, that a good woman deferred, so you learned to be quiet. You became extraordinarily skilled at dismissing your own signals. You learned to say, I'm probably overreacting, before anyone else could say it first. You got very, very good at being small, and it cost you. It cost you years. It cost you relationships that were never right. It cost you opportunities you talked yourself out of because someone made you feel that your instincts weren't trustworthy. She was doing the best she could with what she had been taught. We do not shame her. We do not blame her. We thank her for surviving. And then, with all the gentleness in the world, we say to her, you are allowed to take up space now. You are allowed to know what you know. And the wound of being betrayed by your own hope. This is perhaps the most complicated wound of all, because it was not the world that dismissed your intuition this time. It was you. You felt the warning. You heard the whisper, and you made a choice. And it was a deeply human, deeply understandable choice to hope instead of no. You hoped the relationship would change. You hoped if you loved harder, things would shift. You hoped that the diagnosis wasn't as serious as it felt. You hoped the opportunity was as good as it seemed. And sometimes hope was right, but sometimes it wasn't. And when it wasn't, we did something very painful. We turned the betrayal inward. We said, I should have known better. Why didn't I trust myself? Hear me clearly right now, you did not fail. Your intuition did not fail you. What happened is that you were human, warm, loving, gloriously hopeful, and that is not a character flaw. That is the most beautiful thing about you. The work now, the sacred, necessary work, is to separate hope from truth, not to abandon hope, not to become cynical or closed, but to learn to hold both in your hands at the same time, the hope and the knowing, and to let the knowing have a seat at the table. The wound of not having a model. Many of us grew up watching the women before us live lives where their intuition was never honored, not by the men in their lives, not by the systems around them, and sometimes not even by themselves. We did not see a grandmother who said, no, something feels wrong here, and I am going to listen to that. We saw women who endured, who sacrificed in ways that were sometimes heroic and sometimes heartbreaking, who loved their families fiercely and who also swallowed their own truth for the sake of peace. We inherited their strength. And sometimes, without meaning to, we also inherited their silence. But here is what I want you to consider. You can honor their sacrifice and still choose differently. You can love the women who came before you with every ounce of your heart and still say, I am going to listen to myself in a way she was never given permission to. That is not a betrayal of them. That is the fulfillment of everything they survived for. Before we continue, because what we are about to explore next is something I don't want you to carry alone, I want to ask you something. Is there a woman in your life, a sister, a friend, a daughter, a neighbor, who has been second guessing herself lately, who has been told in 1,000 subtle and not so subtle ways that her instincts don't count? Would you pause this video right now and send it to her? Not with pressure, not with an explanation, just a simple message, I thought of you. This felt like something we both needed because some truths land differently when a friend is holding them alongside you. Share this with one sister or friend who needs a reminder of her worth today. She'll know why you sent it. She always does. Now, let's go deeper. Here is where we stop talking about intuition and we start building the relationship. Because that is what this is. Your intuition is not a switch you flip. It is a relationship. And like any relationship that has been neglected or wounded, it requires patience, consistency, and most importantly, trust. So let me give you what I call the 4 practices of intuitive living. These are not complicated. They're not rigid. They are, like all the best things, deeply, beautifully simple. Your body speaks before your mind does, every time. The body does not lie. It does not have an agenda. It does not care about being polite or keeping the peace. When you are about to make a decision, small or large, before you reach for logic, try this. Place your hand on your chest, breathe in slowly, and ask, what does my body say? Do you feel expansion? A sense of opening, of ease, of yes? Or do you feel contraction? A tightening, a pulling back, a quiet, persistent no? That response, that almost instantaneous physical reply is information, real information, 11 million bits of it. Honor it, note it, write it down if you can. Over time, you will begin to see the pattern. You will begin to recognize what your body's yes feels like versus your body's no. And that distinction will become the most reliable compass you have ever owned. We live in an age of extraordinary noise. And much of that noise has been deliberately designed to crowd out the quiet, because as a woman who cannot hear herself is a woman who can be more easily sold to, manipulated, and managed. I want to invite you, not demand, invite, to build small sanctuaries of silence into your day. 5 minutes in the morning before the world claims you. 10 minutes on a walk where you do not listen to anything. 15 minutes at night where you sit and simply be. This is not indulgence. This is maintenance of the most important instrument you have. In that silence, your intuition will begin to speak, not dramatically, rarely in thunder and lightning, usually in a whisper, a word, a recurring image, a feeling that comes back for the third time, even though you have dismissed it twice. Listen for what comes back. What keeps returning is what is trying to be heard. Your intuition is not random. It has a history. And mining that history is some of the most valuable inner work you will ever do. I want you to think right now, if you are willing, of a time when you knew something and you listened to it, when you followed that quiet inner signal and it led you somewhere good, somewhere safe, somewhere true. Feel that for a moment. Let that memory sit in your body. What did that knowing feel like? Where did you feel it? Was it a warmth in your chest? A sudden clarity? A dream that kept insisting? A thought that appeared without being invited? That is your signature. Your intuition has a signature, a particular way it communicates with you, not with anyone else, just you. Learning your own signature is the foundation of everything, because once you know how you know, you will never be able to pretend that you do not know again. And that, I promise you, is the most liberating thing that will ever happen to you. The courageous boundary. Now we arrive at the hardest part. And the goofy, I will not soften this because you are a woman who has earned straight talk, knowing what you know and still saying nothing. That is not grace. That is self-abandonment. True grace, and I believe in grace with everything I have, true grace is not the absence of boundaries. It is the presence of them held with love. When your intuition sends you a clear signal, this person is not safe, this situation is not right, this path will cost me something I cannot afford to lose. The act of trusting yourself means you take action aligned with that knowing, not with anger, not with righteousness, with quiet, dignified resolve. And I understand with everything in me how frightening that can feel, especially for women who were taught that their peace was everyone else's responsibility. Especially when the people who need the boundary are people you love. But here is what I have witnessed over decades of this work, the women who set boundaries, real, loving, clear, intuition-driven boundaries. They do not lose everything they feared losing. They lose what was already not really there, and they find themselves whole. I want to speak now to something that most conversations about an intuition never quite reach. Something that lives underneath the self-help language and the inspirational quotes. I want to speak to the women who needed their intuition, not for a better career decision or a cleaner relationship, but because their life depended on it. To the woman who sat across from a doctor and felt in her gut that something was being missed, and went back and insisted on a second opinion. To the woman who woke at 3 in the morning with a feeling she could not name and went to check on her child. To the woman who stayed in her car an extra moment in a parking lot because something felt wrong, and then drove away and was safe. To the woman who finally said, after years of silence, I cannot explain why, but I know this marriage is over, and began slowly, terrifyingly, magnificently to build something new. Your intuition was not dramatic in those moments. It was not wearing a cape or announcing itself with trumpets. It was a whisper, a weight in the chest, an image that flashed across the mind and would not leave. That whisper saved you, and I want to say, in case no one has ever said this to you with the depth it deserves, I see what you survived, and I see what it cost you to survive it. The nights you did not sleep, the decisions you made in the dark with no guarantee, only instinct, the moments you chose yourself when every external voice was telling you that choosing yourself was selfish. You were not selfish, you were surviving, and your intuition, that deep, ancient, intelligent voice that lives below the level of words, was the ally that never abandoned you, even when you tried to abandon it. So now we arrive at the most important question of this entire conversation. What happens next? Now that you know what you know, now that you understand that your intuition is not weakness, not drama, not your imagination, what will you do with this? I want to suggest something simple. Not a program, not a system, just a decision to take your inner knowing seriously, to give it the same weight you give the advice of an expert, the judgment of a doctor, the opinion of someone you respect, because you are an expert. You are an expert on your own life, on your own history, on your own patterns, on what has worked and what has cost you, on who has been safe and has only pretended to be. No one on earth has your qualifications for your life. Trust her, the woman who knows, the woman who always knew. Trust her. As we begin to come into the final chapters of our time together today, I want to give you something practical to carry with you. Something small enough to hold and strong enough to matter. Each morning this week, just 7 days, before you reach for your phone, before the news, before the noise, ask yourself 3 questions. What do I know today? What am I avoiding knowing? What would I do if I trusted myself completely? You do not have to act on any of them immediately. Intuition rarely demands that you leap. It simply asks that you listen. And then, when the time comes, in that specific moment where you stand at the edge of a choice, you will have been practicing. You will know what your inner voice sounds like. And you will be able to hear it clearly, even above the noise. That is the practice of intuitive living, not perfection, not omniscience, just relationship, an ongoing, deepening, ever more trusting relationship with the part of you that knows. I want to ask you to think of one woman in your life right now, a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece, a young woman you mentor in some way, and to consider what would it mean for her to see you trust yourself, because the gift of your intuitive confidence is not just for you. It is intergenerational. When she watches you choose yourself, not selfishly, not unkindly, but with clarity and love, she learns that she can too. You are not just healing yourself. You are changing the inheritance. Before I close today, I want to ask you one more time, gently, with love, to think about that one woman. The one who has been doubting herself lately. The one who told you she doesn't know what to do anymore. The one who is brave and brilliant and has forgotten temporarily that she already knows the answer. Send her this, not to fix her, not because you have all the answers, but because we were never meant to carry our knowing alone. We were meant to remind each other to say, I see you. I believe in you. And I think you already know what to do. Share this with one sister or friend who needs a reminder of her worth today. May you find your way back to the woman who knew. May you grant yourself permission, finally, completely, without apology, to trust the voice inside you that has never actually been wrong about what mattered most. May your sanctuary be sacred. May your boundaries be honored, first by you and then by those worthy of your presence. May your healing not be a destination, but a direction. When you choose again and again every morning when you wake and when the world gets loud, may you have the courage to get quiet. When the voices around you drown out the voice within you, may you remember she was always there. She has always been there. She always knew, and so do you. Trust her, the woman who knows